Hello and welcome to the Reading Corner with Mr. Wills. Today we've got one aspect of the background which has changed and a new fancy shirt. I hope you like it. Today we're going to read chapter 12, which is a sad chapter, so if you are of a nervous disposition or feeling a bit low today, maybe save it till tomorrow. However, everyone else, let's turn the page and jump right in. Syrah and the Sea. When we all got to school that first Monday of the second term, it turned out that nearly everyone had heard Ahmet's story. It had spread over the holidays more quickly than the news of a new flavoured packet of crisps. And just as quickly as he had become famous for being the boy that beat up Brendan the bully, Ahmet became famous for being that refugee boy. I don't think anyone kept their promise to Mrs. Khan of not asking him any questions, because everyone in class tried to sneak in at least one whenever they talked to him. Even Michael and Josie and Tom couldn't help themselves and started to ask things like, "Did you have cheese sandwiches in Syria?" And "What was the weather like in Greece?" Or "Did you eat snails and frogs when you were in France?" I don't think Ahmet minded because we were his friends. If he understood the question, he would answer yes or no. And if he didn't understand, he would just stare at us and shrug. But there were lots of people he didn't know asking him lots of questions too. Some of them asked so many questions in one go that we couldn't even understand what they were saying, and we speak English. Some classes even began to send messengers to see if they could find out anything. Messengers are usually the smallest kids in the class and are paid in sweets or football stickers or extra lunch tokens to get information. Some of them are okay and leave you alone if you tell them that you don't want to say anything, but the others, who work for the school bullies, are especially annoying. It's not their fault really, because they will get beaten up if they go back with nothing to tell. But sometimes they won't listen to you even after you've already given them an answer. The most annoying messenger in the whole school is a boy called Victor. Victor's extra skinny, even though he eats chips every day, and he has a gold earring in his ear. He works for two upper school bullies whose names I don't know, but who always hang around the lower boys' toilets and shake anyone that goes in until everything falls out of their pockets. But he also works for a group of girls who always stand around the water fountain, so you never really know who he's a messengering for. After everyone had found out Ahmet was a refugee, Victor followed us round for a whole week. At break times, at lunch times, and even at home times. He would suddenly appear and ask lots of questions that even I found strange, like, "Where did you get your shoes from? Are you scared of fireworks? Can you make a tent from a shirt? And are you really 9 or are you secretly older?" He got so annoying that even the break duty teachers began to notice him and told him to leave Ahmet alone, except Mr. Irons. He was the only teacher who didn't say anything. After he got told off by Mrs. Sanders and Miss Hemsley on one break, Victor stayed away, but his questions stayed with us. Sometimes words hang around longer than people, even when you don't want them to. And whenever I was on my own or just with Tom and Josie and Michael, Victor's questions would pop into my head and make me wonder what they meant. The only thing that was even more annoying than the messengers was Brendan the bully. Because instead of being nicer to Ahmet after seeing his pictures and hearing the story, Brendan became even more horrible. He seemed to have forgotten that Ahmet could turn into a lion and punch him hundreds of times, because he began to whisper, "Oi, smelly refugee bag," whenever he saw him, and in class he would throw spitballs whenever Mrs. Khan or Miss Hemsley weren't looking. When we told Ahmet to tell Mrs. Khan or Mrs. Sanders about it, he shook his head and said, "I'm not scared. Lots of badder people in the camps. My dad said I fight them. So I fight him." When Ahmet said this, I thought he was very brave. So on Halloween, I brought him one of my favourite Tintin books for him to look at, because in it, Tintin stays and fights lots of bad guys, even though the bad guys are bigger and there are lots more of them. There are always lots more of the bad guys. "See, you're like this, see?" I said, showing him the book. I was dressed as a vampire and Ahmet was dressed as a green monster, although Tom said it was the Hulk. We were sitting in the playground and on our own because Tom and Josie and Michael were still eating their lunch and taking too long. "Tintin!" he cried out when he saw the cover. "You know Tintin?" I asked, surprised. I hadn't thought about it before, but I guess Tintin really is famous everywhere. "Yes," said Ahmet. "I read all the time. My dad, he read to me." I nodded, remembering the voices my dad used to make when he read the comics to me too. After a while I said, "I have all of them. You can see them if you like." "I keep this?" asked Ahmet. "Oh," I said. I hadn't really meant to give him the book. I had only wanted to show it him. But I knew I could ask Mum to get me another copy from the library and save it for me when it was about to be thrown away, so I just shrugged and said, "Sure." Ahmet gave me a big smile and started to flick through it. He stopped at a page and pointed at Captain Haddock. "My dad, he had this," he said, moving his finger and pointing to Captain Haddock's beard. "You?" I shook my head. "No, my dad didn't have a beard, but also my dad, he's dead." Ahmet nodded sadly and looked down at the picture. "I not know where my dad is. Maybe he dead too." I looked over at Ahmet. "He's not in London?" Ahmet shook his head. "I come here. My dad, he behind." I frowned. "Behind where?" Ahmet shrugged and looked down at the comic again. "Maybe in France." "Oh," I said, feeling sad for him. I'd hate it if I didn't know where my dad was, or whether he was still alive. I wanted to ask who the lady in the red scarf was, and whether she could help find his dad, and where his mum and his sister and his cat were. But when then Ahmet flicked to another page and held it up to me, he pointed to a picture. In it, Tintin and Captain Haddock and Snowy and a man with an eye patch were all standing on a raft in the middle of the ocean, and Captain Haddock was waving a flag that had been made out of a blue jumper. "See," said Ahmet quietly. I nodded. "I have sister," he said. "She's there now." "You mean here?" I said, pointing to the raft. "No," said Ahmet. "Here," pointing to the ocean. And then I understood. "Oh," I said. I felt strange, as if something had just hit me in my chest. It was the same feeling I'd got in the hospital when Mum and Uncle Lenny told me that my dad had died. "You mean your sister, her name's Syrah," said Ahmet. "Syrah? She is in the sea?" Ahmet nodded and rubbed his eyes. "Then she's not with your cat?" I asked quietly. Ahmet shook his head. "Cat dead. In the mountains." And then, flicking to another page, he pointed to a tent and said, "Mum's sick. Last time I see her." "Oh," I said. I wanted to cry. But Ahmet wasn't crying, so I didn't think I should either. Instead, I stared at the picture he was pointing to just as hard as I could, so he couldn't see my eyes. We didn't say anything else after that, because a few seconds later, Michael and Josie came out and joined us. Tom was still inside because it was chocolate pudding day, and he always tried to get an extra piece after everyone else had left. I waited to see if Ahmet would show the pictures and tell the stories about Syrah and the sea and his mum too, but he didn't. And when he looked at me, he shook his head. I knew that he wanted me to keep it a secret. I nodded back and made a silent promise to Ahmet that I wouldn't tell anybody. But I didn't know that I would be forced to break my promise the very next day. Because that was when I heard something. And it was something so scary that it changed everything. What a sad chapter. I hope you still enjoyed it though. I'll see you very soon. Thank you for watching.